Welcome to the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, a program dedicated to uncovering the unified nature of reality and humanity's ever-evolving place as truly galactic beings. For more information on the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit us online at www.thescienceofmagic.net.
One people, one nation, searching through the night. One people, one nation, searching for the light. One people, one nation.
Hello, and thank you so much for joining us on the Science of Magic. We're coming to you through the X-Zone Broadcast Network, Digital Broadcast Network, and Digital Satellite Network. We can also be found on www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. In this hour, we'll be exploring sacred geometry and tools for transformation. Sacred geometry is both a science and an art form. It's also magic used for millennia to access and wield the powerful invisible forces of nature. Sacred geometry is a necessary component in the rituals used to create sacred space. Now, sacred space is an environment containing a bandwidth of frequencies generated through alignment with natural forces that promotes healing and empowerment. The high frequency of sacred space is an ideal environment to access and attune with the natural power of the universe to empower personal intent and, therefore, manifestation. Sacred geometry and sacred space have been employed in the design and construction of religious structures such as churches, temples, mosques, Tibetan stupas, inipi lodges, and tabernacles. In sacred geometry, symbolic archetypal meanings are associated with particular geometric shapes and proportions that are strategically woven into the structure, thus amplifying the particular characteristics they represent. This may be in the form of a symbol engraved in the building, precious metals and gemstones whose crystalline structures carry a sacred geometry all of their own, artwork, or statuary. It's always reflected within the structure and its orientation to the earth and stars. These principles were jealously guarded and wielded by master masons of old. In Masonic writings, the sun, the moon, the starry firmament, and the blazing star, combined with numerous representations of zodiacs and star charts, indicate that astrology was an integral part of Masonic history. Natural occurring power spots on the planet are the result of triangulation between ley lines of the Earth and the positioning of heavenly bodies. This triangulation forms the substance of sacred geometry. Why all this attention to geometric formations? By accurately aligning with Earth and stellar forces, we can access and focus the powerful energies found therein. Toroidal fields generate power and are created when a positive and negative charge revolve around a neutral pole. As long as positive and negative and neutral remains in balance, tori are capable of perpetual motion, thus presenting an unlimited source of energy. Every planet, star, and galaxy produces an electromagnetic field in the form of tori. It's the toroidal fields of the heavenly bodies that orchestrate the endless motion of the universe. While heaven and earth both contain positive and negative charges, we traditionally view the heavens as masculine and the earth as feminine. It's this viewpoint that enables us to focus the positive aspects of the heavens and the negative charge of the earth to create the polarization needed to generate tori. So, where's the neutral? Well, unconditional love has been promoted by religious leaders across the globe as our connection to the divine. By its very nature, it is open, accepting, and totally neutral. Humans maintaining unconditional love create the neutral around which the positive charge of the heavens and the negative charge of the earth can revolve. This alignment creates and maintains a toroidal field, traditionally accomplished through ceremony and ritual. These rites are most commonly held in the supportive environment of a structure built according to the principles of sacred geometry. However, physical structures are not always necessary. Each human body contains within it countless toroidal fields. Every chakra and organ has its own unique toroidal field. These fields generate our energetic body. When standing in unconditional love and balance, our bodies become the temple. When two or more of us are balanced, maintaining unconditional love and in agreement, the power is magnified exponentially. It's no wonder love is considered the most powerful force in the universe. My guests this hour, Gail and Gregory Hoag, have researched sacred geometry and consciousness for over 40 years. Following a major spiritual awakening in 1982, Gregory started creating energetic tools which provide transformative experiences to foster spiritual evolution and the expansion of Source. He is recognized as one of the leading experts in sacred geometry techniques. Gail Hoag is a health consultant, counselor, and educator and artist, and spiritual advisor. After a short break, we'll come back and I'll introduce to you our guests, Gail and Gregory Hoag. You are listening to The Science of Magic, and I am your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Remember, you can always access this and other thought-provoking Science of Magic episodes on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. We'll be right back.
Nation, searching through the night. One people, one nation.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
One people, one nation, searching through the night.
Welcome back. This is the Science of Magic, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. With us this hour, we have Gregory and Gail Hoag. They are foremost experts on sacred geometry. Welcome, folks.
Thank you, Gwilda.
Thank
It's
you.
great to be here.
It's such an opportunity to work with both of you, and I really appreciate you taking the time. So let's
thank
start
you.
out, Gregory. Would you mind telling us the difference between sacred geometry and regular geometry?
It's more in a matter of perception because obviously everything is geometric in this third dimension. And yet, when we start working with the patterns, the frequencies, the cycles, we look deeply into the structure of matter and even into the structure of galaxies, we find relationships that the more I've studied them, the more I've worked with them, the more I see everything is following a divine order and pattern, an unshakable pattern. And I think when we work with this information in a way that leads us to that understanding of the way the higher order of things work, the more sacred it becomes, I know in my life, because it's reflecting that truth that underlies everything.
So how do you see this as affecting us on the planet exactly?
Well, when you work with the right combinations of patterns and frequencies, cycles and spaces, what happens is you can create an environment that is much more coherent. You can create an environment, and we have, where there is an energy flow through it, where normally energy is not flowing. You can actually have an energy coming from very high dimensional levels, very fine frequencies that have a powerful effect on human consciousness and the body physiologically even. So that's what we're working with, to shift environments and shift people in those environments.
So again, creating sacred space. Is this the kind of the basis behind art forms like feng shui?
Yes, absolutely. And feng shui followed a lot that was done in India for millennia before, in Zarathustra. I'm not sure of the pronunciation, but bottom line, almost all indigenous cultures worked with the patterning of both their structures, the time of their day they found reflected certain patterns back to the body. So all indigenous cultures worked with sacred geometry to form what we call today the time-space continuum in bringing everything together and focused.
So I've studied, of course, the chakras and the acupuncture points and the meridians. Does that relate back to sacred geometry and how we interface with it?
Absolutely. And you'll have many other elements in our environment that relate back to it. All of these different points, the major ones and even the fine ones, work with energy in a toroidal fashion, and that's what you were talking about at the beginning of the show. These toruses are like donuts, the way energy moves to create a vortex. And so we have vortexes of energy over the body, and they even relate to certain colors. I think we've become familiar with the idea the chakras are like a rainbow, and then when we work with certain gemstones and certain minerals, those minerals, the molecular structure determines the kind of the way they refract and reflect light, and that gives us the proper color of, say, an emerald that relates to the heart because it's green. And so we'll find many things in nature where we can go into the structure, into the geometry, discover how it works with sound, discover how it works with color, how it works with the physical body, and how it works with consciousness. And then we can align those elements to create change, to create health, to create just a higher level of consciousness with less worry and negative thoughts coming in because of the coherence.
Is that coherence created by where our toroidal fields cross with the toroidal fields of all the things around us?
Yes, somewhat. What we're talking about is right now we live in a sea it's like white noise with the EMFs, with all the things coming in from the environment. We have so much information being fed into us from so many different sources, and this creates a disruption in the field, in the environment. And so when we can start to bring things into a coherence where everything is moving in that environment in a rhythm, in a cycle that is life affirmative, and we can get there through a number of different means, as we understand, with ceremony and with sound and working with rhythm and patterns and layouts. These kinds of things start to create the field, and when that field is coherent, that is, it is the same throughout it, and it is allowing only the highest frequencies to enter it, what starts to happen is our bodies start to get entrained with those higher frequencies, and those bring with them a sense of calmness, a sense of love. I mean, that's where you start to tap into the unconditional love you were talking about. It's difficult to do that in the daily cacophony of stuff going on around us. But in these higher spaces, love becomes such a fine level of energy that it is called, working with the unconditional aspects of love that we rarely see on the planet without that higher connection.
So it sounds to me like, Gregory, that you're seeing our modern technology that we so rely on at this point is actually interfering with our ability to unite.
I'm afraid so. It really does. All of the toxins we've created, all of the different types of EMFs generating devices, the computers, the cell phones, the amount of information that's put out about negative actions and people's negative thoughts and people's judgments and people's values laid on everything that's being thrown at them visually, auditorily. All of these things disrupt our field and separate us. So in essence, we are playing with a double-edged sword here. We have things that help us move and communicate much better, but on the other hand, they don't let us communicate with the higher, deeper parts of ourselves that sometimes we can discover when we're out in nature, far away from everything, and our feet are dangling in a brook, and we hear the birds and the trees and the wind moving through them. It's a totally different experience in that environment, and that's what we're working to bring into everyday environments, that type of feeling, that type of frequency, that type of energy by working with things that we've just talked about consciously.
So the divine in the middle of mundania. That's beautiful, beautiful thing to be working towards. Gail, I understand you guys built your home on some very powerful land there in Colorado. How do you incorporate sacred geometry into the design?
Well, it was a very important part of what we did because it's our passion. It's what our lives are really focused on. So to begin with, we found property that spoke to us. That, in fact, I remember when I first came out here, I felt like I could breathe deeply for the first time. And so it really led us to look for what was particularly unusual about this property, and we found that there were vortexes of energy, there were power centers that not only were important in this particular area, they were also connected to other power centers around the planet. You know, there are very important places, whether, you think about the Great Pyramids, Mount Shasta, Lake Titicaca, different places that have been identified by different cultures as being very, very special. And so we took the geometric forms that we build, and Gregory placed them in these different vortexes so that the energy could be heightened as well as connect to other places around the planet where we've also had some of these structures placed. So it's kind of like, a satellite, with these different centers that can connect to each other. There are grid systems on this planet that are part of feeding the energy to life on this planet. And so we're working with those grid systems. The other thing that we did, Gwilda, was as we were constructing our house, we worked with an architect that understood the land. He understood sacred geometry, and he incorporated that in the actual design, in some of the different ratios that we were using, and also we placed some very special crystals in the foundation.
That's pretty fascinating, Gail. I'm afraid we're going to have to take another short break here. We will return to our discussion after this short break. You are listening to The Science of Magic. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Do you want to hear more? Other innovative episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net.
One people, one nation, searching through the night. One people, one nation, searching for the light. One people, one nation, coming from the stars.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back to the Science of Magic. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. The Science of Magic theme song, One People, One Nation, is from the Winds of Time album by my musical group, Starfire. It can be found on iTunes.com, cdbaby.com, Amazon.com, and on my website, gwildawiyaka.com. We are speaking with Gregory and Gail Hoag on sacred geometry. So, Gregory, what prompted your 40-year study of sacred geometry?
I think it was just a natural progression in my life of always, from a very young age, being very attracted to the unseen and higher energies. And so when I graduated from college, where I studied science and art, I started working with meditation, started working with different masters, and started experimenting with geometries, and eventually pyramids, large ones that I was sleeping in, living in, and that set off major energetic changes that opened me up to a whole realm of information on higher dimensions and consciousnesses that exist in those dimensions that I could communicate with. And I started building what I was seeing and relating to, and people started having experiences when they were around those structures, and that's what led me down this path for the last 40 years.
Well, for one, I'm very grateful that you headed down the path. You've created some pretty marvelous tools that people can use. So tell me, what kind of research have you done, Gregory?
Well, we've worked with a lot of different equipment to measure brain waves, equipment that we've brought in and had different scientists work with from Russia, particularly, where they work with something called a GDV machine, which can measure what's going on with the energy field, what goes on internally. These machines are used in Russia and in Europe for diagnostic purposes. And what we've found is that some of the tools we build, people can be totally out of balance internally, and after 5 minutes of holding one of these tools that we create, they can be in balance, where the liver starts functioning more effectively, and other internal organs, as well as the energy field of the body becomes stronger and more filled in, and the body becomes more balanced. So those are the kinds of double-blind tests we've been going through the last few years, and testing how our equipment really does shift people's lives.
So it sounds like the toroidal fields created by your tools actually help to rebalance the toroidal fields of the human body. Is that what you're looking at there?
To a great extent, that would be one way of putting it. It's that the energy flows we're bringing into the body are very, very high frequencies that are normally blocked from flow within the body. And so when these energies start flowing through the body, it starts bringing things into order. And what we've seen is it affects things physiologically. It affects things emotionally. When people have those higher aspects of themselves moving through their body, they don't get as upset as easily. They are more cognizant of what's going on around them, what's happening with other people. A sense of intuition and telepathic communication starts happening, especially with animals. And so it's been a remarkable journey seeing how amazing we are as human beings, and that when we're given the space, the environment to explore that bigger part of ourselves, we start expressing a much better aspect of ourselves as well.
You know, Gwilda, it puts us into connection with what you spoke about earlier with the neutral zone, that place of unconditional love. And when we're in that juncture of unconditional love, we're connected and we are able to really access more of who we are. And that's some of the magic that this brings together.
To be the devil's advocate here, it occurs to me that if we're accessing more of who we really are and starting to function on a much higher frequency level, that there might be a bit of a healing crisis, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, in order to process out that which we are not. Have you found this?
That's very true. From time to time, what we find is that when you bring energy into a system, it creates change. When you bring heat to ice, it melts. So there is transformation that starts to happen. And part of the process of transformation is to recognize what's there and to let it go. And the more quickly we're able to let it go, the better that we're able to cycle in to what is the next thing for us that we really want to get to. So it's really a very divine process.
It sounds like it, because I am a believer that all the horrendous things that happen on the planet through human beings is not really done by the human beings, but by their damage and their patterns. So if we can get that moving and become more of who we are and let go of who we are not, it seems to me that peace and prosperity would be the natural result.
Absolutely. And we don't have to analyze it. We have to recognize it. We have to take responsibility for it at the level of acceptance. And in the acceptance, there's also forgiveness of ourselves, of other people, whatever. And again, the more we're in the heart space, we can allow ourselves to be in a place of gratitude for the process. And that just allows everything to keep transforming in a good way.
I heard it said one time, and I love this analogy, you don't go through the garbage when you take it out. You just take responsibility for tying the bag and taking it out.
And then letting it go and walking away.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely. Why do we hang on to that
challenging
stuff?
Thing to do without that higher guidance that I think we're finding. This is a time in history where massive change is possible because there's so many energy shifts occurring on the planet right now that are supporting this new way of perceiving reality to come into human beings.
It's an exciting time to be alive. And again, I'm so grateful that you folks are doing what you're doing to aid people to be able to take out the garbage without getting caught up in it. So, how does sacred geometry become a tool for connection, Gregory?
Well, that's what I was referring to before. When you work with the right shapes, you work with the right patterns, you work with the right materials. I mean, sacred geometry is about frequency, is about the frequency of this crystal, this metal, this type of shape, the way they work together to create a clear space when people have them on their bodies. And when that clear space is formed, it brings in, with the kinds of things we put into these tools, we have many, many antenna systems. It creates a connection to higher resonance, a higher frequency, a bigger part of ourselves that is much more accessible when we have that field, that coherent field around us. And that's how the sacred geometry that we're using is affecting so much change in people's lives, because it allows them to connect to that unconditional love inside. It allows them to open the heart space at their center and be able to operate their brain from that higher part of themselves, rather than thinking everything's coming from this environment. And that often puts us in the place of being a victim, rather than allowing us to be in charge of our life, as these tools seem to support people in being much more proactive in creating their lives.
It sounds so empowering, and I believe it's the place that we're evolving to if we just allow ourselves to do so. This is really great information. Hey, we're going to have to take another short break. We'll be back on the flip side. You are listening to The Science of Magic. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, your host. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back to the Science of Magic. We are dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. With us this hour are Gregory and Gail Hoag. Gregory, so nice to have you guys back.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Gail, as a wife and mother, how do you see sacred geometry as helping create sacred space in your home?
Well, that's interesting because, we're multi-aspected people here. And, we for one thing, our home is filled with the tools that we create. So we have some of these beautiful sacred geometry forms hanging from the ceiling, on a counter. We wear them. Our children wear them. Even our pet is wearing one now. So they are a very integral part of our life. And also, we're so much involved with wanting to, to have a better relationship with our family, with our loved ones, with our community. And so those are conversations that we have oftentimes with our family and friends.
That's amazing. I had the privilege of seeing some of your tools and playing with some of your tools. You gifted me one just recently before the interview, and I'd like to talk a little bit more about those in just a second. But Greg, you started your business together around the time you married in 1985. Do you mind telling us about Metaforms, your mission statement, and the intent you actually have for your company?
We're really dedicated to supporting the evolution of human beings, the plants, the animals, the planet, and working with tools that do precisely that by bringing in higher dimensional energies and helping people understand the major shifts that are afoot, and that it's all going to be okay in the end. I mean, that's our deep feeling. And so that's what started it, and we've been creating tools for the last 30 years to support people in that process, in their awakening, in their well-being.
So one of the tools that I got to play with just recently is the Heart Companion. And what I discovered is that it really takes the edge off of the work involved in staying centered in heart when you're, again, being bombarded by electromagnetic frequencies and imbalances in the environment. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Okay, I wasn't sure if Gail was going to jump in there. Um, the Heart Companion starts to create those higher dimensional frequencies that really open the heart space. And so we'll find that there are many things we've been talking about today, the electromagnetic frequencies, stress in the environment, negative emotions and judgments and toxins. All of those inhibitors are literally surpassed when people wear this tool. They find that they are no longer drawn into negative thoughts, that things start shifting in the way other people interact with them, in the way animals interact with them, which led us to developing the Pet Connect for our dog and other pets for people. And so what we found is that by wearing the Heart Companion, a person can feel centered, and the bottom line thing is people just start feeling good and start feeling present and productive and more focused, and it's all because of the energy that's generated by that tiny piece that they wear around their neck that's filled with all types of antenna systems and circuit boards and certain frequencies and elements. That's what we are working with.
You know, Gwilda, I want to just jump in here and talk about how important it is for us to be coming from our heart center now. We've spent so much of humanity in the head, particularly in our Western culture, and it's time for us to really honor the wisdom of the heart. That is where so much of us is connected to all of life, you know, to the plants and the trees and the animals and the universe. And so the Heart Companion, sitting at the heart and radiating these frequencies, working with sacred geometry, connects us to a higher aspect of who we are and a higher aspect of what is available to us. So just like what you said, it becomes easier to be in that place that feels right, where you really want to be spending more and more of your time.
You know, many indigenous cultures believe that humans are the link between the heavens and the earth. And I personally see that as a function of the heart chakra. Do you agree? And how does your Heart Companion aid and tool this process?
Absolutely. It's so important. And it is a training that is part of our transformation. And, you know, I think that our native cultures have so much to teach us, and they listened to not only their ancestors, but they listened to the galactic experiences and voices and messages. And the more that we integrate those, we can take true wisdom and bring it into the evolution of consciousness, of humanity, of this planet, and resolve many of the problems that we're facing today.
And within that, how do you see our relationship with animals, and why is it so important at this time?
You know, animals, you know, when you go back into native cultures, have been honored greatly. Every single life form holds something very, very important. And the more that we connect with it, not in a way of dominance or, you know, trying to have some kind of use for them, but being grateful for the relationships, you know, as the native said, all my relations, then what happens is we learn from each other. We all evolve together. And that's what our Pet Connect is really about now, is to be able to listen to the wisdom, the messages of the animal kingdom, and, you know, develop more of that heart-centered conversation, that heart-centered relationship that we all can benefit from.
That's so beautifully stated. So beautifully stated. I know that my connection with my animals, I can have had a really tough day and I come home and I'm all grumped out and I'll sit down and a cat will jump into my lap. And then the cat will start to purr and pretty soon the dog will come up around my legs. And I just enter into a place of love for them, from their unconditional love coming at me. And it just brings me such peace that I don't know what I'd do without our animals. So I'm really glad that you guys are in service to the animals as well as to people. So we have just a little bit of time left. Do you have a quick message for our listeners, Gregory?
Well, one thing the Pet Connect does is it helps the animal ground the stress that they take on from you too, because they can be in service. But I think what I really wanted to share was just what an important time we're existing in right now. It's a time where there is massive change, and you can see that in everything going on in the world. And yet, to not get caught up in that and to realize that the answer is through your heart center within you. And when you connect fully and openly to that deeper part of yourself, you'll discover that this is the purpose for all life. Everything can be found within you, and that experience of unconditional love can start to flow through you.
Thank you so much, both of you, for being on the show. Again, they can be found at their website, www.iconnecttoall.com. That's ICONNECT, numeral 2, ALL.com. This has been The Science of Magic. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Remember, you can always listen to this and other thought-provoking episodes on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. Until next time, dear ones, may you be blessed with knowledge and comforted with love.